So, one interesting challenge that I had early in my career is I used to work in Dutch. The most important lesson I had was one day when I was still doing my psychology thesis. I've been working with data for 8 years, which I know things consider is not that long, but you also have to consider that around that time is when the
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Vibe It Up, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of tech and software development. I'm your host, Dan Tudorache, and I bring over 20 years of experience in the software development industry, wearing multiple hats as a solution architect, coach, trainer, and now as a psychologist too. Now, you might be wondering what's the vibe all about? Well, the vibe is not just a podcast, it's a community where we explore the experience of our guests from the emotional point of view, right? And we have today with me Juan Manuel Perafan. Great, and I will let you present yourself, your background a little, and your current role. So just stick on the current role and a little on your background. And after that, we will dive in more into your experience and how the journey of learning and evolving for you felt. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. I'm excited to be here. So, hey everybody, I'm Juan. I was born and raised in Colombia, but I've been living since 2011 in the Netherlands. I actually went to university to study psychology. There was a time where I wanted to do research, very specifically in psychology. One thing led to another, and nowadays we're talking that's, I think, 9 years afterwards. I work as an analytics engineer. Ultimately, I pivoted into the world of data. It all started by building dashboards here and there, and now I'm more concerned about pipelines, deployment, and databases. Also, I am very active in everything that has to do with the community aspect of data. I love going to conferences. I very happy to present in quite a lot of them. Recently went to the Coalesce conference, gave a talk there. The open source foundation, the Linux open source foundation conference as well. And I also organize meetups and events. So my thing, besides very specifically working with data, is also getting some of the data talent together and share knowledge.
Mm, awesome, awesome. You mentioned that you came also from psychology background, and I'm curious how these two domains um, combined are for you. I know how it is for me, but I want to see from your journey. So, okay, could you share a bit about your background and journey into the tech world leading up to your current position?
Sure. So back when I started psychology, as I mentioned, I wanted to do research, and I went very heavily in that corner. I had a lot of statistic courses, even some optional ones that I was not supposed to take. I took them. Um, and I don't know. It's a funny thing to mention it, but the one thing that I really learned from studying psychology is to really be critical and yeah, really critical thinking. I learned there is plenty of studies that are not very solid. There is plenty of publication bias in science, and not that I ever was a proper researcher or anything like that. But the one thing I learned is if you really aspire to be in that world, you cannot rely on what somebody tells you or what you read in a book. You really have to go to the study, read the procedures, how it was done, implemented, sometimes even check the data yourself and see how all of that lands. When I graduated, um, I think my first jobs were in the domain of user research. So seeing how people interacted with apps. Even then, although I sold it as I'm a psychologist, so I'm good at this. In reality, it was a lot of number crunching, filling out reports, interviews, analyzing the data, counting seconds, counting clicks, counting things like that, building funnel charts. Later, I stepped into the world of marketing, digital marketing. I also was a marketing intelligence specialist, which is essentially BI, but for marketing, or just crunching numbers for marketing. And even then, talking back to psychology, probably unexpectedly, maybe the one thing that was very helpful to me was the ability to be critical. I remember, if the truth is, if you live in the world of marketing, there are a lot of people that can bluff their way into a situation extremely well. It happened a lot that startups would come to us and pitch a product, and oh, we're better than Google Analytics and this and that. And my boss at the time really enjoyed that I was, I don't know, let's call it, quite critical about it. I was also always asking them the right questions, and I think I saved, yeah, I saved my company a couple of times making some purchases of products that were maybe not that sound. But yeah, who knows? Not that everybody was like that, but it does happen. So critical thinking is very useful. Eventually, what happened is, there was a point where I realized that I never really liked the marketing side. So on that day, I decided to go much more serious on things like Python, SQL, even R at the time. I think I did the thing that every data person does, where you fantasize about being a data scientist for a while, learn a lot about machine learning, take the Andrew NG courses. But eventually, my thing was business intelligence and analytics. And that's the path that I decided to go. And it's a match made in heaven. So sorry for the long tangent, but if you ask me what's the connection there between psychology and my current job, I could tell you a lot of things, but it's really the critical thinking part, the knowing that there are a lot of things that you really need to check yourself, and that you cannot believe in assumptions or what people tell you.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, indeed. It's a part, and I viewed this. I felt this way too. There are many other parts that led you to being critical and to analyze everything before taking decisions, or I don't know, going into a direction or not. But uh, what you just said is that no matter what background of prof- now study background you have, it's important what you're passionate about, and you can go there, learn the things, and go into that direction. And reflecting on your early career, what were some key roles or projects maybe that significantly influenced your professional growth?
Sure. So I think when I had my first data job, there were two moments, and I still remember them as moments that were career changing. The first one was when I first got my very first Tableau license. So maybe a little bit of background. Part of the job that they expected me to do was to come every day early to the office to fill out some forms and manually update a dashboard. And I said, like, there's no way that I'm gonna arrive earlier to do this. So I looked for tools that automated the process a bit more. And back then, to be honest, I know this is a controversial topic. I still think Tableau is one of the best options for that. But back then, it was much more, um, yeah, better established. Got my first license, got playing with it. Back then, I didn't know too much, but the moment that I'm talking about is when one of the most important people in that company was just walking through the hallways. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that they were staring at my screen. And I was just playing, building graphs and here and there. And He stared at my screen for maybe a minute or two. We're talking about somebody that was very important, always in meetings, always busy, barely had time to say hi at times. And then he started asking, "Can you show me Rotterdam? Can you show me only these cars? Can you show me this? Can you that?" And on that moment, I understood that, wow, there is something mesmerizing about this bringing information to people. Because from that point forwards, I get some notoriety inside of that company. Like I got invited to meetings that I I was a very junior back at the time, but still people care about my opinion and they wanted to see graphs. And to me, it was insane how easy it was to get inside of uh, get ingrained into the way of working of the company just because I was the one that could build the graphs.
You were the only one on that role?
At the time, kind of.
Okay, yeah. So no matter of your level of experience, having that job that was nobody was doing in the company has just propelled you in the inside of colleagues and
Yeah,
management and so.
it's kind of like I think front enders get something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, back enders also do quite a lot of great things, but backenders don't often get the feeling of showing somebody like, look, I built this web page, is pretty. And generally the closer you are to the end user, the more praise you get. Not that that's necessarily fair, but when I first experienced that, I noticed, whoa, there is something magical in data visualizations, and in making dashboards for important people. That is moment one, remember. Moment two is, back at that company, there was system administrator, and I don't know why exactly, but he was not very fond of me. Uh, I don't even know if it was personal or not. But back then, I was like, please give me access to as much data as possible. Let's do this, let's do that. And instead of giving me like a nice solution on how to do it, he would tell me no. And on that moment, I realized, well, if I become really good at SQL, if I become really good at Python, if I become really good at cloud, if I learn how to install a server, if I learn, essentially, if I get really good at everything computer related, then I don't need the help of this person. And I started learning even more SQL, even more Python. Back then, I got very familiar with SQL Server, and I realized, I don't need the help of this person if I just do it. So my career has been a stream of those two moments. The first one, noticing there is something magical about bringing data to people, but understanding that the stronger your computer skills are, the less you're gonna rely on other people, and therefore the more capable and more productive you can be.
Mm. And I suppose you gain more self trust during this journey.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, maybe I shouldn't have had so much self trust, because I'm pretty sure many of the reports that I've ever made were probably not correct or something. I'm sorry to say it, but it's not that I've ever had too much of imposter syndrome or lack of confidence in my skills. Um, Maybe, if anything, part of the learning journey has been to be even more cautious and always assume that things are wrong, and automated testing, and always triple checking that there were not any duplicates in the data, or that the joins are not exploding and exactly the same number of rows. And
Yeah, and looking back on that period when you started, and in your career, in your early career, have you imagine or not quite imagine, maybe remember a specific challenge or obstacle you faced, and how that shaped your approach more to problem solving, and having this part that I can do it myself, as you said earlier, I need to learn that language and that technology.
For sure. So one interesting challenge that I had early in my career is I used to work in Dutch, even though I'm not a native speaker, and I also managed to happen to find a company where I was the only non-Dutch person, and honestly, I learned a lot from that. It was rough. A lot of people making fun of your accent, of the things that you say. You saying something slightly stupid, but even when not, some people were, of course, very nice. Even when not, it would take me forever to write an email because of spell checking and everything. And maybe the one thing that I learned that is kind of nice is me personally. I want to work for a company where my uh yeah, let's call it my origin, my identity, my whatever it is, in this case is my culture, it's seen more as an asset, or even as something that really doesn't matter. I want a company where I say, like, I'm Colombian, tell me either, oh, that's cool because we need somebody to speak Spanish, or a company that tells me, so what, he's Greek, he's Romanian, he's whatever, he's Brazilian. I don't want to work in a company where people constantly remind me, "Oh, you're the only Colombian." Oh, you're. In fact, in that case, it was the only non-Dutch, and I see that quite a lot with, for example, women in tech. Many of them share very similar feelings. If you're the only woman in your group, people keep on treating you more like a woman, and uh, so maybe, yeah, that was a challenge. It's not a technical challenge, but it's it's more something that I learned.
Hmm. And thinking on those time where there are specific, I don't know, decisions that played a crucial role in your journey.
Yeah, for sure. Probably the most important the most important lesson I had was one day when I was still doing my psychology thesis. I don't know, I just had an eureka moment, an aha moment, where I realized, look, it's close to 500 people that are graduating from my program this year. um, there are not that many, like, not even in the world, places to accommodate all of these people, for them to work as researchers, not even for them to work in anything else. The truth is, in psychology there is quite a lot of people that end up in jobs that are not related to psychology, because in some countries, I can speak in from experience on the Netherlands, a lot of people graduate as psychologists, and those who want to go the clinical way, the clinical psychology, I mean, or research, they have a very rough time. So when I realized that, and it was just in a moment, I thought of two things. The first one is, one, whatever it is that I do, my CV has to be at least 10% better than the average person, so companies bother hiring somebody that doesn't speak Dutch perfectly, needs like a work permit, and is competing in a sea of thousands of psychologists also going for it. And two, I need to learn how to program. Uh, uh, Maybe from that day, I started doing a lot of e-learning, a lot of courses, Udemy, Data Camp. Um, the, Back then there was Linux Academy. Nowadays it's called a Cloud Guru. I did a lot of those courses, and that helped me immensely. Getting the right skills, especially in the first, let's call it, 5 years of my career.
Hmm. So how was this part to be hired as or in a tech company as a specialist, or not necessarily tech but a tech specialist in data, without having computer science background or data science or something like that?
Well, the truth is that I've been working with data for 8 years, which I know things considered is not that long, but you also have to consider that around that time is when the term data scientist and big data started. So it was just maybe being in the right place at the right time. These terms were just starting to become popular. Many companies were like, "What exactly is this?" And universities didn't offer any courses in something data except for maybe like informatic. So all of a sudden, from one day to the other, there was a massive shortage of people that um, companies needed to do data, but they were nowhere to be found. And I just that made it very easy to get the first jobs. Also, this applies to almost everything tech. It's very easy to build a portfolio. For every job in tech, you can build your own projects. You can have a nice GitHub, a web page. In my case, dashboards, pipelines. I remember I built this project that will check every day a certain page where I used to order books. And whenever a book was under the lowest threshold that I specified, like maybe like 30 or 70% discount, or sometimes I had it like I would not pay more than 20 books for this book, it would send me an email. And I would just show that to companies and they were like, wow, okay. And at that point, nobody really cared because even now, most of the data people of my generation, and sorry if I speak like if I've been doing this for 50 years, but let's say everybody who's currently a senior or much more than that, uh, I would say 90% of them don't have a data background or data degrees because they didn't exist.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And most of them either came from other fields of learning or from mathematics or something like that. If few of them were coming from computer science, because people coming from computer science either they were going to DBA, database administrators or engineers basically, but not quite analyzing the data. So they took only the engineering part of the data, but not analyzing and the mechanism of how you take decisions based on data, right? So yeah, it's true what you said, and I've seen a lot of I had a lot of colleagues that were coming from other fields or maybe from researching and doctorate or something like that in the field. Oh, on your considering your past experience on that and lessons learned, how do you approach the critical decision making ex- skills, to say like that? Because as a data scientist, you need to take some decisions or to present for the people to take better decisions, right?
Yeah, to me it's kind of easy because I may be a bit too cynical for my own safety. So, I don't know. It comes a bit natural to me, but the truth is that one thing that I once told somebody I used to work with is please take odds similar to what you would do when it comes to jumping from a plane. Like if I tell you, sure, jump from this plane, but the parachute will only open 20% of the time, what would you do? And the truth is that I think I've been very lucky. I'm a consultant, so I've been very lucky to work in a lot of industries. If you work in heavily regulated industries like well, finance, insurance, even food safety, uh, you know that you have to check and recheck. And I've learned a lot from the way that they do things. Even from pilots, they really have to check and do a lot of things, and there is no bypassing all of that. But then I've also worked for marketing companies where it's like, hey, I need 30,000 for a commercial. Sure, here it is. And then no interest in measuring if it worked or not. Or So to me, I found a lot of success going to fields where there is a really big punishment to get things wrong, learn what they do to avoid those consequences, and then bringing all of that to other fields. Because the truth is that I get it in marketing. Uh, if 20% of your budget is well spent, maybe it's good enough. But the truth is, in some companies, a bad decision can literally kill people. So, um, me personally, I'm a bit more risk adverse, and so that's why I advocate for a lot of things. For example, I love unit tests for my logic, data tests, and I think more companies should do it. So, coming back to your question, I think everybody can learn a lot from being exposed to a situation where making a mistake really makes a difference. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. All of those companies that really care about not making mistakes, they already have their things, their Six Sigmas, their whatever methods of production or supply chain magic. Just learn a bit of that, and that will help you a lot.
Mm, yeah, the process on
Yeah, working for
working.
strict companies.
Yeah, yeah, being more organized for especially in large companies. From your experience, why
Yes.
is emotional intelligence important in the tech industry, but ignoring that you had studied psychology before?
Oh, sure. I think emotional intelligence is important for every job, and even for having a happy life.
Starting
So
from there.
yeah, I think no matter what, humans dealing with humans is always going to be present, and it can even make your life terrible or great. And it's exactly the same in the job. I think quite a lot of problems that we are that we come across are very human problems. Just to give you some examples, naming conventions, people making everybody admin, or two people disagreeing on which programming language they want to work on. All of that are technically people problems, and the right way of solving it requires some sort of emotional or social intelligence. Um, that's the truth. Maybe one thing to add there is I do get the impression that everybody in tech, or at least people, when they picture somebody that works in tech or a programmer, they tend to think of somebody that is very socially awkward and something. So I, if I can put it somehow, it is I get the feeling that people think that tech people are worse dealing with other people than what they really are. Especially, mm, I know there are exceptions, but especially those tech jobs that require a lot of user interaction, like most data jobs do, quite a lot of web design jobs do. I think those people ironically tend to develop a lot of emotional intelligence, even if they're behind a computer a lot of the time, because you have to negotiate with stakeholders and everything from expectation management to how to gather requirements. I secretly think that even though we think of IT people as bad with people, you do learn a lot of social skills from these jobs, except with some exceptions of very, very technical back end type of jobs. But most of them still required um, some sort of connection with the person that is going to end up using your solution.
Mm, yeah, yeah, indeed. And I felt that on my own skills, because the start of my career, having this background in just pure tech and computer science and computer architecture and hardware. there was little to no study and I don't know, learning and preparation on the non-technical part, which is emotional intelligence, communication skills, and so on. And later in my career, I have experienced the lack of those skills, right? When I was in a leadership position, when I was in need to communicate with the stakeholders and the clients. And from then, I decided, okay, I need to upgrade those skills, right, in order to be better at my job. And yeah, I agree with everything you said. And there is this stigma around technical people, engineers, that we are bad in communication. And I don't know, maybe because people in tech are more introverts sometimes, and they are stick to working with computers, and they don't necessarily have the time for chit chat or being I don't know, expressed in public. But there's a lack of studying and development on that part, which is emotional intelligence skills, empathy, how we handle feedback, right, without taking ourselves too personally, how to lower down our ego when we came to a senior position and we have only juniors there.
Yeah, I have one thing to add, and that is during my first job as a consultant. So after I did the marketing and decided I want to do data, I ended up in a consultancy company. I can name them personally. Their name is Victory. They are an analytics company. They did back then quite a lot of Tableau things. Back then, it was my first consultancy job, and really stakeholder management became much more intense at the time. I was very lucky to have a manager. I'm gonna name him. His name is Matthew Miller. He very early on uh, was great. He would take me to meetings. He would talk to people, talk over requirements, tell them no, that's not possible. Uh, Upsell, cross sell, telling good news, bad news. He brought me to a lot of his meetings very early on in the first weeks. And after the meeting, he would debrief me like, I said this is what it was in my head, and this, that. And he also made a lot of like templates of whenever you go to an assignment, always 1 week before do this call and ask all of these questions. And even some of the questions were like, what is the dress code? Or what is your current architecture? Where can I park? Or can I bring my own food type of things? So what I wanted to mention is maybe I get much more stakeholders management than the average IT person because I work in consultancy. But my first consultancy job, I was also very lucky to have Matthew as a manager because he really taught me a lot of the soft skills of data from gathering requirements. And he had not only the templates, but to me was mega helpful to be involved in those meetings. And at the end, get a sneak preview of like, the reason I asked this is because I expected this answer. So I wanted to soften the blow before I said this. But then I proposed this other solution type of things. I was very helpful.
Yes, yes. We will get to the mentoring part. So you feel like this was a significant mentorship experience for you, right? And it impacted your professional journey.
For sure. I really think we should be making more courses on how to gather requirements. Um, I always say like if you have ever been involved with the work with the Scrum, with a company that does Scrum very seriously at least, or if you have ever met a very good Scrum master, you're gonna notice that for each of the Scrum rituals, let's say the retro, just to name an example, there are thousands of templates of ask every team member these questions, ask this, ask that. To me, I think one thing that we really need to work on as data people is to have like documents and templates and guides on how to do all of the social parts of our job much better. For example, I would love that there would be a book saying like gathering requirements for IT people. Another one called presenting your job for data people. Another one called how to deliver bad news for data people. I don't know. Because yeah, I've also read like how not to get in. Oh, another one, how not to get in trouble. No, all of the IT security you need to know to not get in trouble. um, I really wish that we would templatize and take it more seriously to mentor new people coming into these jobs into those things. Because when somebody tells you what happens when you don't use a password manager, or when you accidentally send data via email and you messed up seriously, uh, it's much better when somebody tells you what happens then than you actually leaving all of that. I was very lucky. I had somebody that mentored me early on with all of those things. So now that I work in another company, uh, actually, maybe good to also bring up. I'm currently working a company called Xebia. I'm also a consultant there, and it's very fun because this company, Xebia, they specialize mostly on seniors. So back when I worked there, it was called Go Data Driven. Now they decided to rebrand as Xebia, which was always the mother company. And it's been a very funny contrast because since Xebia mostly hires seniors, there is very little emphasis on like this is how you do things from a beginner perspective. So it's great. I had a company that really taught me a lot of the things of how to be a beginner, how to start from scratch, and now I get to benefit a lot from that. Working a company where maybe I don't have a lot of structure when it comes to the basics, but I
Hmm.
do get to work with some people that are amazing at what they do.
Mm.
And
And
they're
from
the,
yeah,
no,
yeah, from what you are saying and how this helped you, it's very important the environment that you are working in. Maybe as a junior or even as a middle and senior, because being a supportive environment, it helps you grow and it helps you learn. And if you were to mentor someone entering the, I don't know, software development or data science industry, what advice would you prioritize in your guidance?
as I told you, I think finding the right team for you is super important. I noticed this as a consultant. Sometimes you end up in teams similar to my first job where you do much more than what you should be doing. Like there was no good reason for somebody so junior to have admin rights to a database. But nice because I learned a lot and I had a lot of permissions to create cool things, and all of that freedom really helped me to yeah, explore. But I didn't
Mm,
have a lot of structure. In my second job, I got a bit more structure, a bit more like rituals, and you do this and knowledge exchange here and there, and a webinar once a month, those type of things. And that was also great. Um, Currently, I work in a company that has a bit less structure, but I think I'm very happy now that I know exactly what I want to do, what I want to learn, where I want to go. If I don't fully want to follow a guideline because I know a better way, there is room for me to do it. So the advice for new people is find the team that is in the moment where you're at. It can happen that maybe you land a job, but then they make you do the tasks that nobody wants to do or that are not that great for your career. That tends to happen when you work with a lot of very talented people and you're the only one catching up. If you work in a company that has a good balance between juniors and seniors, you might get like the structure that you want. And if you work in a company that is very strong in tech or very senior heavy, you might get a lot of the freedom that I'm currently enjoying. So, depending on what moment in your career you're on, definitely consider the amount of people that you're going to be working on, and really check who your colleagues are. How many engineers are there working in the team potentially where you're joining? How long they have been working there? Do they have a portfolio? Do they speak at conferences? Do they do things? And more or
Mm.
less, there to imagine what is going to be your place. If I'm going to end up doing the test that none of them want to do, or maybe I can learn from them. All of that is important.
Yeah, yeah, and also this brings me so the idea of the networking before you went to apply for a company or a job or role. Just find someone from that company, find someone working in the team that you are will that you will enter, and get some grasp from there. What's the environment, how is the colleagues, how, I don't know, how is the management handling the things, and that will help you very much to um, get the data that you mentioned earlier, right? Because
For
you
sure.
cannot know from the HR department. They even don't know how what is happening in the teams.
No, no, true. The best indication that you can ever get from a company is when you attend a meetup and you talk to the people there. I'm
Mm,
a, I'm a big fan of meetups. I organize a lot of them. The
mm-hmm,
analytics engineer meetup in the Netherlands, and also the DVT meetup in the Netherlands. In the past, I did
mm-hmm,
the data visualization meetup, and it's great. Once you have a company as a speaker, just from the talk, quite often you can see if it's just one tech genius working there, or if it's like a whole team of very strong engineers, and
mm-hmm,
even how interesting are the projects that they're working on. And if anything sounds interesting, people are very open in a meetup to have a beer, talk, this, that, career advice. I've never directly asked for a job during the meetup, but who knows? Maybe it does happen. What I just wanted to say is, especially meetups are a great, very natural place for you to approach people, network. You can also do it directly via LinkedIn. Sometimes I've met some very interesting people like this, as in like, hey, you're interesting, let's have a chat about this topic.
mm,
But LinkedIn tends to be a bit more difficult because very senior people, they don't check it too much. Just
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because if you get like 10 messages from recruiters and everybody that you care about has your personal information, then
Yes, yes.
I know people that don't even check their inbox on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. So
I know too, and I was that in this position too. When everything is warm at your company, with your job, with your role, you don't care about going to other communities, with talking with people. But when the stuff gets a little more shaky, maybe unstable, right? You're starting to to build your network, and it's a pity because we have a lot of to learn from one another, and there are a lot of people that we can help from our experience, right? To guide them or say them, okay, maybe that will be suitable for you or not, right, in the team. And yeah, yeah, thank you for that. I have one question that I put to all my guests. So if you would have dinner with any figure from the tech industry, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
ooh, if I could have dinner with, hmm, that's very tricky because I've had dinner with a lot of people that I
Mm-hmm.
thought were very interesting, like startup founders. I mean, I could go for like a big celebrity person. I personally really love Hadley Wickham. He's very involved in the art community. I don't use art
Mm-hmm.
too much, but that guy is like a productive monster, very opinionated in a good way. I think he will be very interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there is, of course, Linus Torvald, but I'm afraid that he would think I'm stupid or something. So he's
Why? Why did you say that?
I don't know. Maybe he's a very nice person, but just I've seen quite a lot of his talks, and I can notice he's the type of person that completely forgot what it's like to not be a genius.
I see.
So,
You cannot go down on the mortals, right?
yeah, like I remember one time somebody asked him a question, and the answer that he gave, I was like, me personally, I was like, I didn't understand anything of that answer, and I'm supposed to because that's my line of work. So he's very interesting, but I'll be more intimidated. I think I would choose Hadley Wickham because even though their community is not that big anymore, I still think
Mm-hmm.
he's a very enigmatic character in the tech world.
Mm. Okay, okay. Thank you. And similarly, if you would be ready to recommend one book or resource for the audience that significantly influenced your career, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a really great question. So, um, well, technically, some of my colleagues and I are currently writing a book. I think it's gonna be ready in the summer next year. So maybe stay tuned for that one. But
What will be the name of the book and the topic?
it's gonna be about analytics engineering.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So indeed, we want to break down the core of the job into chapters. So there is, of course, a chapter in data modeling, a chapter in serving data, a chapter in
Mm,
gathering requirements, a chapter in data
yeah,
governance.
very helpful. Awesome. Awesome.
So it's kind of a guide of the job, which is very new. I didn't speak too much about analytics engineering, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a very new thing. Going back to books that helped me and my career, I think I really love the big book of dashboards. I think that one is a it's a masterpiece. It's very inspiring to see all of that. If you're if you're aspiring to be maybe more of an analyst than like an IT data person, more an analyst, there is this one called Makeover Monday, which is a book that came from an initiative with the same name where they post a data set every week and everybody just makes dashboards using that data set, and at the end of the week they compare the results and everything. The people behind that initiative, they wrote a book. You can also find it by googling Makeover Monday. It's a really good book. It's They give you a lot of tips on how to do your work, um, and it's quite solid.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good job for people becoming analysts.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for all the goodies
And
mentioned.
the definite guide to Spark.
Okay, okay.
That one was super helpful as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as you prepare your final thoughts for the podcast, is there a particular piece of advice or insight you would like to leave with the audience?
Yeah. Yes. So I can speak mostly about data for anybody trying to enter the data world right now. Uh, just know that the market is getting a bit more difficult in this year, late 2023. However, I do believe we are at the very beginning of a new era where a lot of the data jobs are going to have a DevOps component.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of the tools. Power BI recently released a way to programmatically edit dashboards. Tableau is has some features and is working on new ones. I really think that data is going to become much more DevOps heavy. And if you're right now a senior, a meteor data person, and you're looking for new skills, consider becoming really good at deploying everything, data pipelines, even dashboards, because
Hmm.
that's one area where you're going to get a lot of job security. And it's something that's a little revolution. This whole data ops is just relatively starting 5 years ago. So you can get a lot of advantage from everybody. Um, that's maybe
Hmm.
something. Being really good at deployment pays off when you're more of a senior.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And I felt that on my in my own experience that having the extra skills beside what you are doing, it helps you very much. And in particular in the DevOps and cloud, AWS, Azure, or whatever
Yeah,
cloud you are working in, it helps you very much to do that thing and not to rely on extra person to
yeah.
handle that for you. Okay, thank you. And finally, if you want to uh, provide information on how listeners can connect with you after the podcast, if there are any social media profiles, website, or other platforms you'd like to share.
For sure. I personally a huge fan of LinkedIn. You can find me with the name that I'm providing here, Juan Manuel Perafan.
Hmm.
I what I always say is anybody that contacts me looking for help or that wants me to appear in whatever it is, podcast, a conference talk, I'm always super happy to do that. Even have a coffee, whatever. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Also, I'm a consultant. I do analytics engineering. So if you're have questions about the topic, maybe we can make this into a gig, or I can put you to the right resources. We're also hiring in my current company a team of analytics engineers, especially
Hmm.
a bit more senior profiles. And finally, who knows? Let's stay in touch for about meetups. That's a topic that I love. Maybe I'll see even you, Dan, in a conference in the near future.
Yeah, yeah. Why not? Why not? Thank you very much, Juan. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Vibe It Up. I hope you enjoyed our insightful conversation with Juan Manuel. And before we go, I want to extend a big thank you to our guest for sharing his valuable experiences and perspective. So, if
Thank
you,
you
our
for having
listeners, have been inspired or have burning questions after this episode, I encourage you to connect with us. You can find more about the Vibe It Up community on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and soon on our Discord channel. We're not there yet. Um, so thank you very much, Juan. I
it. Was my
hope it
pleasure.
was a pleasure for you this discussion, and I waiting you maybe another time in the podcast. Why not?
Sure. Thank you so much for everything. And thank you, everybody listening.